Yeah, we'll be fine. So Elliot, I'm going to hit the record now on
I
my
just hit
screen.
record. We're cooking.
Oh, we're recording now. Oh, I
Yes.
see. All right. Okay. All right. Well, so let's get started. So I'm going to first turn it over to Bob for the very official approval of the minutes and the introduction of Roy.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, welcome everybody. And for those who are new, we'll greet you in a moment. All the chatter that's been going on is a reflection of the days when we met in person. And Jim Shattuck brought coffee and some donuts, but no tea. And we had an opportunity to network. You know, we may want to reinstate that to start at 9 o'clock and let people just have the opportunity to chat a little bit with each other, because that is something that these days gets missed too much. In any event, let's begin with approval of the minutes, which, as we determined, is something we need to do based upon our bylaws. After the April meeting, Mike Clem circulated the minutes, and you all had an opportunity to look at it. And actually, people who didn't attend had an opportunity to look at it. Does anyone have any corrections that need to be made to those minutes? If not, we'll deem them to be approved. And so then the first item is Roy Anderson. Roy, we have a number of guests and new members joining us today. So could you please introduce them?
Right. One guest, and I know he's on the line, Steve Spiro. Steve, could you just say hello to the group?
Hello, group. Good to be here. Hope everyone's healthy and safe.
Welcome. The next meeting, you'll be probably introduced as a new member. Right now, it's a guest. So we have some new members. I hope that they're on Zoom now. The first is Mike Alaka. Mike, are you there?
I am. Yes, I am.
Could you just give us a business background and areas of your mentoring expertise?
Sure. Let's see. We go back almost 60 years. My background is in engineering, marketing, and general management. I spent almost 18 years at Pitney Bowes. My last job there was vice president, general manager of their core business unit, the postage meter unit. I then left Pitney and joined a company called Hassler, which was a competitor of Pitney. I was president and CEO of that company for 10 years before retiring. Since I retired, I got a doctorate in general management and business admin. I taught as an adjunct professor at Sacred Heart and Pace. I also taught management and leadership seminars to high-level executives for the Mahler Company. I joined SCORE in 2010 for a couple of years, and I guess I'm looking at what's happening in the world today, and I see a terrific demand for what SCORE does, and I thought I might be of help.
Thank you, Mike, and welcome back to SCORE.
Well, thank you.
Next, we have Eugenia Salas. Eugenia, are you there? Guess not. How about Jeff Knapp?
Yep, I'm here.
Jeff, maybe you could say a few words about your business background and areas of expertise.
Sure, I'd love to. So currently I'm on a tour for our insurance group, which I joined last year, who's run by a very good friend of mine. And but my majority of my background was spent in finance, predominantly on Wall Street. I was with 3 large firms, Lehman Brothers, RBC, Raymond James. I then went off and did some entrepreneurial ventures. I went to a startup, which didn't go too well because we ran into the global financial crisis in 2007 and 8. But that I continued to move along in the finance world with several small companies. So I'm very familiar with being a part of startups and smaller companies. And in my current role, we work with a lot of people individually, but also small business owners. And I'm a big fan of helping people however I can help them with sales, marketing, raising capital, and things of that nature.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jeff, and welcome. Welcome to SCORE.
Thank you.
Next, we have Nancy McGuire. Are you here?
No.
I guess not. David Millington. David, are you here? I
Yes,
guess
I am.
not.
Yes.
Yes, I
It
am.
is.
Oh, you are?
Yes,
Good.
yeah, I was muted. Yes, so I'm David Millington. I have over 20 years of experience in procurement and supply chain, with an emphasis in continuous improvement engineering. I have a master's degree in quality systems engineering, a bachelor's degree in the same field as well, and about 21 related designations or certifications. I'm also an accredited small and mid-sized enterprise consultant, and currently the director of product development and education for Next Level Purchasing Association, which is one of the top 5 certifying bodies for procurement professionals. And I was involved in SCORE a few years back, both New Jersey and Bridgeport chapters before the merger. And I see that there's a dire need for expertise of this type that SCORE offers, and it's my duty to step up and help out. I would love to. I'm in the process of writing 4 books on procurement and supply chain, and a 5th book on continuous improvement, process improvement in the small service arena. So hopefully I get those published next year. So I understand most of my experiences in the small and mid-size arena, with one directorship under the 500 level.
Good.
Well, thank you. Thank you, David. And welcome back to SCORE.
Thank you.
Next is Bill Pisani there. Bill?
I don't see him logged in.
No.
Okay. How about Hannah Webb?
I see Hannah.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
There we go. Hey everyone, my name is Hannah Webb, and I have a background in both consulting, where I spent some time, as well as most recently in Citibank as a digital vice president. So my background is mostly in both consulting as well as product management, and I actually recently just joined a different company where I'm sort of taking that to a more managerial level. So definitely happy to help out for anyone who's curious around product management or anything digital.
Well, very good. Thank you. Welcome to SCORE, Hannah. Let me just check to see, is Nancy McGuire on? Eugenia Zalis or Bill Pisani? I guess we'll have to catch them at the next meeting. Our current membership is 135. We have 2 people that are prospective members and 23 provisional members. The onboarding of new members is managed by Yoshio Endo, Joe McCaffrey, Bill Presley, Don Petrimus, Alan Rosenberg, Barry Skalka, and Bob Zitter. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. And I and I know Steve welcome our new members and our guests. Roy, it's really a pleasure, because each month we've been really adding to our roster, not just in numbers, but some highly qualified people. And a special welcome back to those who have had experience with SCORE and are becoming re-engaged. As was mentioned, this is an important time for the small business community to and to be able to help them navigate through a troubled time. So having experience is what we offer, and I'm glad that those who are joining us are using that. So let's start with our report from co-chairs. Steve, you can kick it off.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks, Bob. Just want to make sure I'm off mute. For the new members and everybody else, I think it's like Bob was saying, it's like buckle up. We got a lot of work to do here. So this is for those of you that are new. We have these monthly meetings. We've converted them to Zoom. I hope they're a good way to introduce you to the breadth of things that we do. This message is going to be recorded and will be available on video, YouTube later, probably today or for sure tomorrow. So feel free, if you miss something, especially if you're new, go there and you'll get an opportunity to see it again. Bob?
So first, we both want to recognize and thank the group of mentors led by Yoshio Endo, who have been our core team fielding client questions and requests for assistance with the various COVID loan programs. That group had a name called the SOAP group, S-O-A-P, which Yoshio can explain if he wishes. But this group has been extremely well organized and helpful to clients with a very, very fast response time, which was needed during the loan application process. And we're very proud of all that you've accomplished. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Congratulations on a great work there, Yoshio and team. And speaking of loan programs, I think you've probably seen some of this in the press, but as of the first week of May, the SBA has provided about 48,000 PPP emergency loans to Connecticut businesses, totaling around $6.7 billion. PPP processing is still going on, although it slowed down significantly, so that number will grow. And as we all know and read and see on the news, there's bills going through Congress that will have continued implications for funding to small businesses.
Also, during both March and April, our education activity has done an amazing job in the change to all webinars from a hybrid of workshops and webinars. But the real story is how our education committee, the technical support team, and the presenters have rapidly created, scheduled, and promoted webinars that have been meaningful and so very helpful to our clients who needed help dealing with the various emergency loan programs, the dramatic slowdown of their business, operating from home, and all the issues involved with this. During this period, we have ramped up to offer between 3 to 5 webinars each week compared to the 2 webinars per month normally produced pre-COVID. This has taken much creative thinking and a phenomenal amount of work. The effort was compounded by a change of our workshop administrative assistant and then the illness of our new assistant. We are grateful that Kathy Shields and Belinda Wasser were able to step in to help us keep things going. Steve?
Yeah, so continuing on the subject of workshops that we've began we're currently planning and already offering, trying to do things almost in real time here, a series of webinars focused on what businesses need to consider and do as they plan to restart their businesses and rebuild their businesses. It's an extremely complicated topic and subject. We're not going to cover it here, but whatever the timing is for restarting, and I think depending upon the town in Connecticut, it's a little bit different. State says the 20th, but now's the time to plan and get ready for that restart, whatever the terms and conditions of it are, so to speak. Our first restart webinar was available on Monday, May 11th, and it was presented by Matt Krieger. After our break at about 10:30, Matt has agreed to come and present that webinar content to the entire group. It's a great backdrop for all of us to kind of have in our brains as we talk to clients and manage our way forward. We also have another webinar. Is today the 15th? Today is the 15th. No, tomorrow's the 15th. We have another webinar on the 15th on branding in this environment, another on the 18th, and others under construction. We're thinking about later today, if we have time after Matt, we may have a discussion about some ideas that you all have about what we might be talking about to our clients in this restarting and rebuilding environment. So that's pretty much it now. But the thing about the restart is, you know, we as members of SCORE are part of the SBA. SBA is a part of the federal government. And most of the restart rules are being controlled by the state and the local communities. So that's always a challenge for us. But go to the Connecticut State Government website to find out the latest and greatest on what the rules and regulations are. Bob?
So this ramped up webinar effort resulted in significantly increased participation during this period, on which Tim Ryan will report with the numbers, I believe. But let me say that not only were our live webinar numbers up dramatically, but the on-demand viewing of our recorded webinars has grown exponentially. And now we're offering our webinars to our partners like Wilton, Westport, Fairfield, Greenwich Libraries, and the town of Darien, to name but a few. And beyond our clients within our Fairfield County service area, during this last month, SCORE chapters throughout Connecticut and the New England region have been providing the webinars that we create to their clients.
So thanks to everybody who's been involved in this and working on the reformulation of the education program. It's been somewhat, well, maybe short of a miracle, but it's been a phenomenal effort. And our early adoption of the webinar technology has really been kind of the cornerstone of our being able to do this. We've really achieved something truly unique and outstanding. And actually, I'm going to throw, Bob, I'm going to get off script here for a second, because I see Kathy Pika is on the line. And unbeknownst, everybody thinks I started the webinar program. It's actually not true. In like October of 2015, right, Kathy? Kathy was asked to start this. And so she jumped in, and then she went off to do, and said she wanted to go off and do her own thing. And then I kind of like I was in the wrong spot or something and got assigned to do it. So thanks to Kathy for being the person who gave us some push on that in the first place. Bob, over to you.
Yeah, and just one last postscript. I mentioned, I think, at our last meeting, we are actively in discussions with SCORE National about trying to change how they account for the work that we do. And we're lobbying quite hard and getting some good response about getting on-demand webinars to count in our numbers. During the COVID crisis, our live webinar numbers are being counted. But at least the management team at SCORE National has woken up to the fact that watching things when people want to watch them is what the client base want and what most people in the United States want. So the time is right, and we're pushing and trying to see if we can get SCORE National to give us credit for the work that we've really been pioneers with. Now, while we can help people apply for loans and even help them through a downturn or even consider bankruptcy, we need to recognize that the sober impact of COVID, that COVID is going to lead a significant percentage of small businesses to disappear. And these are times for which SCORE has been established. And these are the times when we can really help make a difference to those business owners. And when we reach the other side of this crisis, we'll need to be there to help the existing businesses rebuild, new businesses start, and existing businesses grow.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Yeah, good, yeah, excellent point. I heard an estimate by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that of the 30 million small businesses in the United States, 40%, this is a national thing, would disappear. It's a kind of a sobering number, to say the least. But as Bob said, now's the time. If you're interested in helping small businesses, this is the time. And we're going to grow into this space and become a bigger part of the impact in Fairfield County than we've ever been before. And so to support that kind of a growth, you know, we've been talking, or I've been talking, and Melissa has been talking, and we'll talk about it more in a minute, about one of our kind of breakthrough programs, which was an internal education program on digital marketing and social media. We had our last module of the first three. That sounds kind of like a contradiction, doesn't it? Of our first three module curriculum, we finished the last one on April 24th. And it's available as indicated in emails from Melissa that she sent out in April. It just occurred to me that some of you that are new members may not have received it. If you didn't, contact Melissa. If you go back in your mail, you'll find it was probably towards the end of April. So what we're recommending is that based on your propensity to counsel and the type of clients that you have, that take as many of these modules as you see fit for your requirements. It's kind of like, think of it as going to college. If we can remember back that far, the first module is like a 101, the third module is like a 301. And based on the feedback from our attendees, which again, this is internal education, not external education, we've decided to extend the program kind of with a graduate level set of courses that will begin hopefully by the end of May. Based on case studies of actually situations taken from real Fairfield County SCORE client engagements. I know you received an email from Bob and me soliciting your involvement in the social media case study continuous education program. Stephen Gorenberg has a small, very concise set of forms to be filled out to be the basis of these case studies. So please take a look at that, and please forward your cases so we can build the curriculum and continue on with that important effort. We're going to try to get 2 case studies done before July. Now, there's lots of reasons why this is important. One of them is because most of our clients, when you ask them what they want us to consult with them on, is social media, how to turn up a marketing presence and a marketing engine in social media. So we were able to talk to SCORE National, and they've accepted our 3-module program as an offering to incorporate in their workshop and education program. And I kind of quote is what I would like to do is create another section with our workshop materials for some featured content, which is hot in demand, but is also topical. These modules will go there. So this is kind of what we're all about at SCORE Fairfield County. Those of you that are new, we're always, one of the top 5 to 10 chapters out of the 300 around the country, and this is the kind of thing we try to do to spread the word and make everybody better. Bob?
Also, in April, we reviewed our real estate strategy with the executive committee, and I thought it'd be good to give the entire membership a summary of that. Let me start from the beginning for those who perhaps are new members. The lease for our Norwalk office expires at the end of calendar 2021, as does the SBA's funding for our rent. They have been funding that rent for quite some time. And we evaluated our needs, which can best be described as the hub office, having a hub office in the area in or close to Norwalk that would be supplemented by satellite mentoring locations around Fairfield County, as we have some now. Since before COVID, our Norwalk office space, was utilized less than 25% of the time for mentoring. And since entrepreneurs have been gravitating to shared workspace, we will be evaluating these options in addition to more traditional space, including our current location. As I mentioned, we have plenty of time to do this, and we will look to make some recommendations for approval by SCORE National, which will have to approve what we decide. And that will be done in the third quarter of 2021. Since we will be paying the rent beginning in 2022, we will be building upon the fundraising program that Brian Baxendale has already established. And as a matter of fact, congratulations are deserved for Brian and his team, who have already exceeded their fundraising forecast for this year. Brian, thank you, congratulations, and you'll tell us more about it in detail in a moment. Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. So lastly, and again, back to almost to the beginning of the meeting when Rory introduced the new members, we've had a lot of new members volunteering to become mentors for our chapter. And as those of us that have been around for a while know, the onboarding process includes observing existing mentor sessions. Now, this can either be seen as difficult or easy during this COVID/Zoom kind of world. I think it's actually probably easier. So for those of you that are actively mentoring, please reach out and invite the new members to one of your video or maybe even phone mentoring meetings so they can learn about how it works at SCORE and our SLATE methodology and become full mentors themselves. So when someone from the onboarding team run by Yoshio asks you to help, please respond and invite the new mentor to observe. Bob?
Thanks. One last thing from me, and I just wanted to let everyone know so that you hear it from me. My term as co-chair is scheduled to end on September 30th, and that was the plan since I was elected to fill the balance of Bob Hogan's term, my predecessor, and that term will end this September 30th. Personally, I want to say that I've really enjoyed partnering with Steve since we share a similar vision and strategy for where the chapter and SCORE should be going. And we work very well with each other. We complement each other a lot. And while there's still a lot of time between now and the end of September, and these days time moves slowly, I still am going to be working on this role 100% through the balance of the fiscal year. I wanted to let everyone know about this now because Steve and the executive committee will have and need to have time for the process to determine who will succeed me and what the structure will be. And I just want everyone to know that I'm going to give the job everything for the last several months that I've done in the first few months. But I have to tell you that I do greatly look forward to getting back to increasing my client workload and mentoring, which is my true love. So I just wanted to let everyone know about that now. Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Yeah, I'm not going to even remotely address the subject of thank you because you got a lot of work to do. So heads down and let's get going here, keep going. But we have formed a search committee, and some of you may have actually been already contacted by them regarding your desire to lead the chapter with me. I will continue as co-chair after after October 1st for the next year after that. So, if you're thinking about this, now is really the time. We've alluded to it several times and we all know it. Now is the time for which SCORE was really created. And now if you're interested in really adding value to and helping small businesses get started, restarted, and thrive, now's the time to do it. The leadership role here is actually quite enriching. I find it. We quite enriching. So there's a lot of work to do, and just give it some really serious thought if you're contacted by the search committee. If you want to make a difference for small businesses, now is the time. So thanks for your consideration, and everybody, from Bob and me, everybody, please be healthy. I'm now going to turn it over.
Steve?
Yeah, Bob.
Before we go on with the agenda, I think I've noticed that maybe one or of the people that Roy was seeking to introduce before has joined. So we just see Roy. There were a couple of names.
Roy, you're on mute, by the way.
I am.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, okay
Yeah,
now?
Yeah, you're okay
good
now.
Okay. I believe Bill Pisani has joined, and maybe, Bill, could you just say about your business background and areas of expertise?
Sure. Thank you, Roy. Sorry for joining late. Had some issues with getting the correct login, but here I am. Thank you for having me. My name is Bill Pisani. I'm the owner of Vantage Consulting. It's a marketing consultancy that helps companies formulate a growth strategy. We use the right mix of digital and traditional marketing tactics and technologies and channels to reach customers and business objectives. Some of my areas of expertise and projects I've worked on include branding, website design, choosing the right MarTech, which is technologies used for marketing, and fit that within a company's need and budget. Also work with social marketing strategy and demand generation. So prior to Vantage, I worked in various marketing roles for companies large and small, across many different industries, including software, manufacturing, professional services, to name a few. So I recently joined SCORE, kind of in the midst of all this disruption, and I hope to share my experiences to help small businesses navigate their challenges, to build their business, and to be successful. I also hope to learn from other SCORE volunteers about various topics and help me to grow professionally so I can be an even more valuable mentor. So currently I'm in the process of ramping up to become a mentor. I've met with Bob, I've met with Donald and Roy, and I'm on monthly desk duty, and I've been attending some of the online sessions and learning quite a bit. So thank you for your support, and any guidance you can give me, I'd appreciate it. I'm not quite at that mentor state yet, but that's my goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and welcome to SCORE.
Thank you.
Look forward to using you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so Roy, is there another new member who signed on during the session?
I'm not has Nancy McGuire or Eugenia Zalis? I don't believe they have signed on. So that's it as far as the new members are concerned.
And Bob, you didn't see anybody else there, Bob?
No, that's it. Yeah, so we can go.
All right, good. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Tim Ryan now. Make sure you're unmuted there, Tim, to give us an in-depth dive into the education report. Tim, take it away.
Good morning. So April was probably a historic month for SCORE Fairfield County education, in that we did not hold a single live workshop. And we think it's going to be this way for May, June, and possibly even further on. But it's, as Bob had alluded to, our total reach in terms of the local webinars, the national webinars, and the recorded webinar views, they're up 29% on a year-to-date basis, which is phenomenal, in my opinion. And I think that's very much attributed to our ability to quickly pivot to the all-webinar format on relevant topics that our clients want to hear about. We did a couple of SBA updates on the new federal programs that were well attended, but other events achieved very good attendance as well. I think the lack of live workshops has increased recorded view demands, and I also think that some of our success is attributed to SCORE National and other chapters looking for more content, and they've discovered Fairfield County's webinar program and our recorded webinars. The Education Committee, as Bob had alluded to, and our counselors in charge have been very challenged lately. Our admin support, Lena, she came down with COVID-19 and she is still recovering. We are also challenged in the fact, as we alluded to, that to increase our webinar coverage, Budley trained several of us to be webinar hosts. And we're also looking at expanding the technical Zoom side. Elliot took on the role. Budley trained him, and I think they have one more in the wings that they're going to be training to help out there. So we had to scramble to turn around needed content on the new COVID-19 programs very quickly. At the same time, we're trying to ensure that we're promoting our programs adequately. We will need workshops on how to ramp back up. As Steve alluded to, our first one was on Monday, done by Matt Krieger. And it's going to be called the Restart Series, and our next one is tomorrow. In addition to that, we're also continuing to evolve and coming up with improvements to our marketing and our email follow-ups and, you know, our partnerships with other chapters as well. So that's about it. Bob?
Okay, thank you. We can accommodate questions. We'll see how we do it with the Zoom format, but does anyone have any questions? For
Yeah, you can just do it right there in the bottom in the chat room. Click on the two and you can either do it to everybody or individually, or to Tim.
Yeah, actually, and I'm going to mention one. I was going to respond to it by chat, but David Millington, thank you. You raised a question that, not a question, a comment of something that you can offer. You know, in terms of some training. And David, I think we need to get you together with Tim or Bob Hogan, who oversee the group of scheduling webinars and workshops that may be of interest to our clients. And what you propose is something that, you know, hopefully you can follow up with Bob or Tim about, so that you can pursue that. Anyone else have any questions?
Well, Bob, just to add to that, I would also ask David that if he thinks this is something that he and Tim and Bob, when they talk about it, would have value as an internal education module as well, that would also be a possibility, and that either you know, Stephen Gorenberg could help with that if you want. But I think this sounds like a fascinating topic, and let's pursue it.
Yes. So David, Stephen Gorenberg, who is on here, has been leading our effort on internal education, educating mentors, and Tim and Bob, client education. So thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda is Melissa Holluck in terms of the marketing committee. Melissa?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Couple things. I wanted to start by saying I definitely heard some good marketing expertise from our prospective new members. So definitely want to be reaching out to some of you to see if you've got an interest in joining our marketing committee. We're definitely looking for expertise, particularly in social media and some of the other areas that were mentioned. And I also would like to thank Steve Gorenberg for his work on our social media education, Jeff Ford, who I don't believe is on the call this morning, on working on email marketing, and then Locke Pavlik, who does our monthly newsletter. So they've been active members of the marketing committee. So as Steve said, we've got really three priorities. We're really trying to keep it simple. Number one is to build our volunteer social media skills. And what we've done there is we've recorded the 3 modules of social media education. The last one is on content, which is really key to everything we do. So definitely encourage you, if you haven't already, to view all 3 of those modules. And then also continuing on with the case studies that, you know, we're looking for some really good demonstrated success with clients on building a social media program. So I know we've reached out again, encourage you to come forward if you've got a client story that you'd like to share. I know we've got some out there. Second area that we're focused on is really expanding our marketing to social media. We hadn't been doing really much of anything. It's been primarily what National was doing, and they actually do a good job of promoting the national webinars and a couple of the webinars that we do locally. But we've now been working to bump that up and do more in terms of talking about the mentoring services we have, our library of resources, and some of the other things that are non-education related. So we've been really, I think, advertising more heavily on Facebook and LinkedIn since March, and that seems to be doing well. We're also starting to do some paid advertising in Facebook, and that's really increased the reach of what we're doing. So I think that will be translating hopefully into greater awareness of SCORE Fairfield County and more clients and mentors coming forward. And then our third initiative is really around email marketing. So we've been primarily using email to promote our workshops and webinars. We're looking at really kind of re-engineering the process to some extent. So Jeff Ford is leading an effort to document the as-is process, and then we're going to work on the to-be process. This is going to be very closely coordinated with Tim and the Education Committee, really looking at, how many times should we be sending out emails? Is there a better way to do this? How do we, really break through the clutter? So that's the third initiative. Another big piece of this is really looking at our client list. We call it our client list, but there's about 13,000 names that are a combination of clients and prospects and mentors. So really looking at the composition of that list, it plays into our fundraising efforts because we want to be, it's a huge asset we have. So we want to bring that forward as part of the sponsorship package that Brian Baxendale's working on. So those are really our three initiatives: the volunteer social media skills, the expanding the use of social media for our own marketing, and the re-engineering of the email marketing process. So for now, kind of everything else has been on the back burner in terms of events, reaching out to women and veterans primarily. But I'm sure that's going to start ramping up again, as we get past this period of time we're in. So looking forward to seeing some new faces in our marketing committee, and I'll be reaching out to some of you soon. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks,
Go ahead,
Melissa.
Bob.
Yeah, I was just going to say, especially to those who have joined the chapter in recent months and are in the process of, our marketing and education committees, and I'll say it in advance of Brian, our fundraising committee, always benefit from new ideas, new thinking, and your energy. So, they would welcome you stepping up and offering to participate in whatever way possible. So, Brian Baxendale heads our fundraising effort, and Brian, can you report on where things are and also the project that you're working on now going forward?
Yes, thanks, Bob. Good morning. In the month of April, we did receive another grant from Stanford Rotary. Thank you to Charlie Judd, who's a member. Grant was $3,000. So far in 2020, we've had 8 grants over and above the normal grants we receive. And actually, just now we received in the month of May, which I'm not officially reporting on, the normal customary grant from Pitney Bowes of $4,800, which we're very grateful for, courtesy of Hiro Nandani, who's also on the team, bringing our total to just under $29,000, which is reasonably good, I think. The next month or so, we'll be introducing our $20,000 webinar sponsorship program to the marketplace, and continuing to work with Fairfield County Community Foundation on a women's initiative which we started, then aborted partly with the change of obviously COVID-19, but they're still interested in proceeding on a woman and girls orientated initiative, which has some potential, I believe. Melissa, of course, will be intimately involved. We'll be highly dependent on the women's group for leading this, and I think there's a good potential there. And we're also obviously holding ourselves in readiness to move forward on the sponsorship of the Small Business Awards event in September, which is probably now going to be a virtual event, but we're awaiting news on that, where we'll be obviously marketing that for sponsorship from various banks around the whole of Connecticut. So far doing reasonably well. Looking forward to another successful quarter. Thank you.
I have to add a postscript to Brian's report, and that is that, as I mentioned, since we in 2022, our economics are going to change because we're going to need to be funding our cost of our rent. The plan was to take our running rate fundraising from the past and over the next past year and the next year, start building upon that. And one of the things that Brian mentioned is, I think, most important, which is that I think you said there were 9, but there are a number of new grants that have been cultivated from organizations that were not supporting our SCORE chapter in the past. And so that's what we've been really looking to do, is to build upon the base of those organizations that had been good regular fundraisers. And as a result, he said modestly what the number is, but the number has already exceeded what we were budgeting for this year. So what Brian's work is doing, and the work of people who are on his team, is building us to a point that by 2022, we will be able to easily handle the running rate costs of a lease that we haven't had to pay for up till that time. So Brian, thank you so much for that. And particularly thanks to Hero, who was instrumental in the most recent grant that we received.
Bob, one thing I'd like to just add, if I may, any of our great new members, and there's a lot of talent there, if they are members of, let's say, a Rotary locally, if they could just put their hand up or reach out to me or to anybody who could forward the message to me, because to apply to a Rotary, who are very good to us in general, you have to have one member who can advocate for you or be a member of that particular Rotary. So that would be a request. If anybody is a member of a Rotary, if they could just identify themselves, I'll be very grateful.
Yeah, I think I would even broaden that, Brian, that there are not too many people who love fundraising and asking for money. But what a successful fundraising campaign is about are contacts, so that if we're looking to make our case to an organization, a business, an institution, people who can point the team to the right people and make an introduction are very beneficial. So everyone can really participate to some degree here without having to be the one to ask for money. But speaking of money, Evelyn Chen, our treasurer. Evelyn, can you give us your report on how things stand and where they're going?
Sure, Bob. Good morning, everybody. The chapter cash balance as of May 11th is $84,000. Our national allocation balance is $0. Since our last meeting, we received a check of $466 donation from Aetna in recognition of Ruth Kelly's active role with our chapter. Thank you very much to Ruth for reaching out to your former employer on behalf of the chapter. We also received a $500 check, which is the grant from the Westport Rotary Club Foundation. I want to reach out and say thank you to Stan Whitco, who was instrumental in efforts in obtaining this grant. We did receive, and it was deposited, the $3,000 from the Stanford Rotary Trust that Brian mentioned. Thank you to Charlie Judd, who is a longstanding member of both the Stanford Rotary as well as our chapter. And thank you to Brian for your efforts on fundraising for the chapter. As noted last month, we have now fully utilized the national allocation funds that were received for the year. So for the remaining 4.5 months of our fiscal year, local chapter funds will be used to cover all of our expenditures. Thank you.
Yeah, great. We're right on time. And as Bob said before, if you have any questions for any of the speakers, just post them down in the chat room. The plan now is to take a break, and at 10:30, Matt Krieger will be signing on. And as I said before, Matt's going to take 30 minutes or so to take us through the webinar material that he presented to our client base on Monday. And it was all about getting ready to restart. That's not exactly the title, but that's kind of what it's all about. It's like questions to ask yourself as you get ready to restart, writing notes, thinking about things so that when you get the regulations that actually come in from the state, you can put them up against your own business plan or your questions about how to restart and decide when and how to do that. So it's on everybody's mind. Every single small business that we're dealing with, it's exactly what they're thinking about today and tomorrow. So I think it's important for everybody to kind of like see the latest. I also will say, and hopefully Matt won't join me because he would be embarrassed by this, but Matt is also a member of the operating committee at SCORE Fairfield County. He's our chief technology officer. He also runs a small business, a small manufacturing company. They applied for PPP. They received it. I mean, sometimes when we have Matt on the, on discussions on Zoom, he's got a mask on because he's going back and forth between the factory floor. So it's just been an incredible effort by Matt to do this at, basically over last weekend. And so we really owe a debt of gratitude to him because we wanted to get this message out as fast as we can because it's perishable, right? So that's my sales pitch, to stay on and listen to Matt. Go, Bob.
So speaking of restarting, we will restart at 10:30, and to coordinate watches, I seem to have 10:24 right now. So that'll give.
Can we make it 10:35?
Okay.
I want to make sure Matt gets on and catches his breath, and it's because I told him to sign on at 10:30, so he may be,
Okay, so everyone can take 10 minutes, and then hopefully come back at 10:35. We'll begin with Matt.
I'm going to be pausing recording, and I'm going to unmute you all so you can talk among yourselves. And when we come back, we'll put it all back together.
That's a nice touch. And record.
Recording is going again.
All right, good. Thanks, Elliot. Yeah, so this is, we're going to now talk about, or actually Matt is going to take us through the presentation he gave as a webinar on Monday. And you can see the title there. It's Running a Business Post-COVID, Actions, Tactics, and Questions. That's about 40 minutes. And I want to just say again, thank you very much to Matt for doing this. He's got a lot on his plate right now. He's got his mask on because he's probably going to run back to the factory floor as soon as he gives us his 40 minutes of his time. So those of you that don't know Matt, get to know him because he's really going to be an important part of our business as we try to become more data driven as we move forward. So Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Steve. And by the way, thanks so much, Steve. I'm gonna be really efficient here. I doubt I'll go over 20 minutes, if that's okay. Okay. Can you guys hear me okay though?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, super. So Steve asked me to help kick off the restart series that we're doing. And I was happy to participate. A lot of this is informed by my own experiences here with a manufacturing business that my father and I own and that I run in Stratford, and reflects how we're looking at things. And so the basis of this was to try to lay out a sort of a general set of thoughts and questions for the clients and the webinar attendees to think about in terms of finance and marketing and customers and so on. And then the subsequent restart series would go deeper into the details. So anyway, so I try to have a couple consistent themes throughout the whole process. One was essentially that we shouldn't consider this event a blip, that we say, okay, when the dust settles, I will do so-and-so. Fundamentally, things may have changed. We don't know the future, but probably it makes sense to look at it as that fundamentally things may have changed, and that you should try to look at your business out of a new lens, which requires a bunch of predictions. I try to emphasize also that this is just one type of disaster. There are other disasters. And one of the key things here is I think businesses need to have greater resiliency and greater flexibility for any number of disasters, from simple things like a basic flood to something like COVID. And so I tried to emphasize that flexibility and resiliency should be in everybody's thought process. So these are a set of questions that I posed for people to think about. Obviously, many businesses today are reevaluating their business model. Do they want to pivot? If they were a foot traffic driven business, what does that mean? Certainly, if you were based on foot traffic, you're going to have to supplement that with digital marketing today, I think, in order to continue. What happens? Are there new business opportunities that result? It's not just about damage control. It's about new business too. Do I operate differently? We talk about resiliency again as a theme throughout. I mentioned that the competitive landscape will likely have changed. Many small business competitors will probably have not survived. And if you've survived, you probably have a fundamental strength. So what does that mean? Are there competitive opportunities there? Looking at staffing differently, vis-a-vis working remotely, safe conditions, and so on. And then the hard questions about, can I be in business anymore? So really, I said, I suggested that everything be reevaluated. By the way, for many businesses, of course, the answers are very, very obvious. For others, they may not be. And as I said before, as the first element in the Restart series, I tried to take a horizontal approach across business functions, and then the subsequent webinars will drill down. So I urged the attendees to take a look at their finances first. If they've survived, it's likely because they managed their cash. Subsequent collections, of course, are going to be very important. I suggested that companies rank their customers in terms of their ability to pay, and then subsequently prioritize their own obligations. I know here we've had to make some very hard choices. We have a lot of very upset vendors. Now, things are different today because it's COVID and everybody's going through it. So there's a bit more compassion, although you know how it is. When somebody's trying to collect from you, they kind of have a different face. They don't say, well, I know you owe me $20,000, but because of COVID, I don't feel so bad about it. It's business as usual, and people want their money, and I get that. And once again, we talk about resiliency, and I'll comment more on that on the next slide. So I suggested that, as always, cash is king. If you were questioning whether you needed help with working capital, whether you needed a line of credit or one of the many other ways to get capital, it's a little late in the game to be thinking about it. But again, when you're restarting, probably very, very important, especially when many small businesses are living week to week. For those who received the PPP, I urged that they use the PPP very purposefully. So we received Payroll Protection Program funds last week. We have a plan for using them. Of course, one of the requirements for forgiveness is to use at least 75% on payroll. We're looking at whether we would use more. I urged companies who did take the PPP to make very clear that their accounting practices around the PPP are clean. Keep it in a separate account. I urged, and this is my own editorializing in this, but my opinion is that the PPP funding is not fungible. So use it to pay what it's for, not to not to pay your AP in the meantime. On the financial side, again, we talked about this: ranking customers, ranking their ability to pay. Spend your time trying to collect money from where you think you will get it. I suggested that now is a good time to think about investments in marketing. I generally believe that advertising and marketing are something you should be doing all the time. It is, I think, especially important to do it today, particularly A, to let people know that you're alive, B, because you probably are in a small group of survivors relative to your competitors, and C, you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself potentially. And then finally, I recommended people look at their insurances and other programs. I think everybody's seeing that if they had business continuity insurance, COVID is certainly not covered under that. But it's a good thing to think about, and we'll comment a little on that later. So some of the obvious questions under operations. Do I still have a supply chain? Can they meet their obligations to me? Do I have cash tied up? Those sort of things. Very, very important. I suggested supply chain diversity. We'll talk about that on the next slide. But in general, again, a theme is here resiliency. So what can I do to be more flexible against supply chain outages or against operational threats? And that spans suppliers, it spans employees as well. We want to eliminate the volatility. Finally, many companies, even though it's 2020, many companies are sort of not digital first. There's a lot of paper around. People were not prepared to work from home. I saw companies scrambling to implement the basic technology to do that, and employees ought to have that technology, and companies ought to have that infrastructure today to allow a remote working environment. So what did I do? I urged on your operation side, look at sources of volatility. Well, what does that mean? It means it means where are my greatest risks and threats in my supply chain. It means employees who have critical knowledge that's only in their head. It means my ability to produce my product or service independent of location. So I suggested ranking those areas in terms of risk and volatility. And certainly, if there's anything important to do, I urge that essential processes ought to be really defined and documented. This is one of the biggest problems in small business. We have this too. We don't do a terrific job at documenting our processes. We tend to define things too much in terms of the people who do them instead of the functions themselves. And the problem is then you lose somebody and suddenly you lose control of your function. So I've always been a believer, but not necessarily a good implementer of the notion that you define your processes on a functional basis and then assign them to people as opposed to just defining your processes in terms of people. I started out here with the compassionate angle. Hopefully, are people okay? Are they coming back? Do I need them back? I think that's one of the key questions a lot of businesses are seeing. I think particularly businesses that do administrative work or do knowledge worker type work. I think many businesses are questioning whether or not they need the same amount of employees. That's a scary notion. But I do think it is a reality today, and I suspect many big businesses will recognize that, and small, will recognize that they don't need employees even after they resume 100% operations. I think there could be, substantial layoffs. If I have a physical space, am I properly observing the social norms? Am I observing regulations? All of the obvious stuff. It is unlikely that, at least in the near future, we'll congregate around the water cooler in the same way we did before. We talked about critical knowledge, and I think I covered that. So I recommended to the attendees that they evaluate what their real requirements are in terms of positions and location and funding payroll beyond PPP. I think that there is some silver lining here in the sense that many businesses have been forced into the remote work situation, and they are finding it effective and they are finding it cheaper. And I suspect we'll see, some softening in the real estate market. I suspect we'll see probably some softness even in the WeWorks and in the Sacred Heart Innovation Hub type things as people see that working from home often just works. Certainly workplace safety, purposeful layout, cleaning, letting employees know that they have a safe place to be. And then finally, I use this term remote native. What does remote native mean? It means that truly you can function with everybody remote and virtual. That's more than technology. That is it's a culture change. It's a culture change in collaboration. It's a culture change dealing in time zones. It's a culture change just in expectations and etiquette associated with being remote. And we're going to touch on remote native when it comes to customers as well. So that is right here. So I urged businesses to not assume that their customers know that they're alive. Let them know, touch them. You will be unique in that regard as your competitors, as I said, I think will, there will be dilution in your competition. Obviously ask, is my customer still there? Can I collect from them? Are they the same customers? Maybe I have new customers now. Certainly if if I'm a food service business and I have a restaurant, I'm evaluating what my business model is. Do I become more of a delivery service? If I'm a cleaning service today, I think a house cleaning service, for example, I think you have potentially new customers who have greater sensitivity towards cleanliness. That presents an opportunity, and potentially there's niches. And I wouldn't be surprised if businesses, if we started seeing, COVID compliant stamps everywhere with people marketing themselves as COVID friendly. We talked about that, ranking customers, again, everything being forced to digital. Again, if you're a foot traffic based business, you just have no option but to be digital anyway. So many small businesses do not have a website. They need it. There is just no way around that. So I urge everybody today to do the minimum there. It's just not an option. We talked about remote first again. Remote first doesn't just apply, or remote native doesn't just apply to your employees, but it applies to how you interact with your customers, customer service, sales visits, product delivery. All of these things I think have to be thought out. I know that, I haven't traveled here for my business in, 3 months or more. My sales process is very different. Actually, there's not a lot of activity going on right now because so many of my customers are not open, but when they do open, there's going to be less travel, and we're going to do things differently, at least in the meantime. And just like employees, I think customers are going to want to know that when they enter your building and they enter your space, that you're observing basic guidelines. Yep, I talked about that. A couple comments on competition that I harped on maybe too much already. Maybe it seems a bit cutthroat, but certainly competition will have changed. There will be many competitors who have disappeared. I suggest everybody to aggressively look at those gaps. Look at those gaps from a marketing point of view. Look at grabbing those customers, those markets. I think that there is potentially very, very good opportunity there for any type of business to take advantage. And as I said, if you are considering cutting investment or driving efficiency and conserving cash, which of course is so important, I would still say have a bias on marketing spend, because I just think I think marketing spend now is sort of like buying in a stock market on a dip. I think that potentially you get a leverage payback. we talked about getting a bigger piece of the pie, going into new markets. I think we talked about all this. In fact, if I give this presentation in the future, I think I'm going to combine these question and recommendation slides. There might be a little too much duplication here. So again, I retouched on the themes at the end. Look at things differently, assume a new norm, flexibility and resiliency throughout, financial review, interactions, certainly reach out to your customers, very, very, very important, as we said. Look at grabbing new businesses and markets and competitive advantages based on today's roadmap. And finally, I emphasized the notion of a business continuity plan. I suggested again that COVID is certainly very unique, but it is not unique in the sense of it is not the first business interruption we've had, and won't be the last. And what I suggested that attendees do is think about the items in the bullet list as a sample of quote unquote disasters or interruptions that could happen. Think about those things and then put them up against a lens of your financial situation, your operations, your customers and sales and marketing, your employees. Put them on top of that lens, that filter, and ask yourself, where are my weak points and what do I need to do to bolster those weak points? There were a number of questions at the end about business continuity resources. I pointed them to the work that Brian Baxendale did several years ago. There was a couple webinars on business continuity, and then there was a resources from preparect.org or maybe .com that lay out worksheets of business continuity planning. And I really recommended that everybody look at those and consider that, as again, this is not a unique situation here. So, one side effect of that is I do think we might want to come out in the short term with business continuity workshops or some other resources. I think that there could be really good demand there. That's it. I think I went, 20 minutes.
Exactly 20 minutes.
That was great. Can you, let's see, go back to the unshare the slides?
Take them down?
Yeah, take them down for a moment.
Yeah, but let me unshare my screen, right.
Yeah, let's end it. So, first of all, Matt, thank you. That has been, I didn't see the one that you did for our clients, but it's a fabulous, fabulous overview. And thank you for putting it together, but I gather you're living through it. So, I understand. As Steve mentioned earlier, Matt's was the beginning of a series that we're going to do, and this was an overview, and the other sessions that have been made or are going to happen will dive deeper in different topics. One thing that I thought would be interesting if we have a few minutes and any interest here is if we were in our meeting space that we've traditionally used at the Norwalk City Hall Community Room, there oftentimes would be some discussion. Discussion on Zoom is something that we haven't really tried much before. But what I'd like to see if there's any interest in, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see something called participants. And if you click on that, you'll see a list of everyone who's here. At the bottom of the list of participants, in the right-hand bottom corner, there's something say raise hand. And so what I'm going to suggest is that we have a discussion for a few minutes. And I'll tell you, my opening question. And if you'd like to say something like Steve Smith has already, he's raised his hand, and so is Jeff Knapp. And so I can look through this and then I'll call upon you for you to comment. I think it would be useful to have some conversation, particularly as we've asked some people to develop webinars for our clients in this, to see what kind of topics our members here think that we need to be addressing that has not yet been talked about in Matt's overview. So Steve's hand went up first, and I'll ask him for his comment.
So my first kudos to you for inventing this new idea. This is excellent. I've had lots of thoughts about this because I've been having conversations with small businesses. I have some friends that have them. Matt's been sharing his experiences. One of the things that looks like it's going to happen right now, and I also talked to the second selectman in Westport yesterday and the first selectman in Darien last week, and it's like, okay, the state has got a set of guidelines. They're going to be very confusing, and these towns are trying to figure out how to advise their small businesses on what this stuff means. It's kind of like government speak. Maybe they can do it better than we can. I think they probably can. But some of the scenarios that I've heard, one of them kind of goes like this. It's like, okay, I'm a hair salon, and God knows I could really use one right now. But so we've been closed. Nothing going on. Now the new guideline is going to come out, and they're going to say something like within the 75 square feet, one person per 75 square feet per time, whatever number. How do I figure out whether I want to open or not? Because as soon as I open, I've got variable costs on top of the fixed costs. And how much flow am I going to get through this store? How much do I need to do to kind of cover? Is it better for me just to stay closed and wait until I can actually return? That kind of a scenario. So it's I don't know that we will ever know the answer, because I don't think we will necessarily be able to interpret what the government regulations actually are. But that's the kind of thinking that they're going through. So reopen doesn't mean go back to the way it was. Reopen is some nebulous place where nobody's ever been before. And I think we need to kind of think about that either through real life experiences or talking to our clients in mentoring situations. And we might be able to put together a webinar on that subject as a part of the Restart series. That just the first thought that came to my mind.
Thanks, Steve. Two other people have raised their hands. First is Jeff Knapp. Jeff?
I'm a newbie, but I'm going to start contributing. Matthew, thank you so much. That was very insightful information, and you touched on one thing that I wanted to expand upon a little bit. As we are in this harsh time when people are losing jobs and their backs are against the wall, we're going to see crime on the rise, and we have to remind business owners to protect not only their hard assets, but one thing that has opened up a whole can of worms is that everybody is now on Zoom calls, mobile devices more than ever. And that opens up a huge exposure, and we're going to see cybercrime spike as well, as these hackers who know how to do this, who are out of a job, are going to start pecking away and trying to get 10,000 here and 5,000 here. And it's really important for business owners to make sure that they've got trained their staff on not on clicking on things and putting in the processes. What if my business, my IT is completely shut down? What are the steps that I'm going to take to mitigate that problem? And lastly, everybody should have cyber coverage, whether it's personal or your business. It's relatively inexpensive, but it can save a business from going under.
Thanks, Jeff. Very appropriate.
So now, didn't Budley just do Tim? Didn't Budley just do a webinar or on this?
Yes, he did on
within the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think.
Cybersecurity for businesses in the COVID era and working from home.
Yeah, so Jeff, we've been kind of aware of that because we have, and he's not on today, but Budley Freund, who's one of our long-term members, he's really all over that security issue. But having said that, I'd encourage you to reach out to him and just kind of link up with your thoughts, because I think that could be a part of the series. I think you're right.
It looks like we have one on the 29th that was added. in the latest webinar calendar, 8 to 9 a.m., tech and security tips with Bud.
Okay, so it's coming up. Okay, so that's maybe where I saw it.
Oh,
in the
no.
marketing.
Hey, Steve, it's Bob. We did one a while ago, and this one is a follow-up that we just, Melissa just noted that we just scheduled. And this one here to for a lot along the lines that Jeff just mentioned. But so I would echo what you're saying.
Good.
Jeff, please reach out to Budley. I'm sure two of you can connect your thoughts.
Yeah, great.
Stephen Gorenberg.
Good morning, all. So Matt, first of all, thank you for that presentation. I got a lot of good ideas out of this. I was really taken with your phrase, digital first. And maybe we want to think about having a webinar, perhaps something like 7 Habits of Highly Effective Digital Business, and talk about things that businesses ought to be thinking about as they move more towards the digital world. Even things so basic as, you know, Matt, you said a lot of people don't even have a basic website. Another thing, Matt, that you shared with me was the use of a tool called Loom to do quick video demos. So, you know, maybe we could show tools that would help companies move to a digital world. Again, just a thought, but something I'd like to collaborate with you on if you're interested.
Let's just do that. I mean, that's a fantastic idea. I think it's one of the things we can really help. If everything is changing. I mean, I just take the Westport hardware store. Okay, I've been going there for years, and you know, now you got this cockamamie way of trying. They don't have a website, so I have to call them on the phone and order, and you know, and then or go to their website, and I order some kind of light bulb, and they give me the wrong one, and it's like, no, it's not. It's incredible how many people don't have. So I like this really 7 digital tools, something like that. I think that's a really good idea.
So 7 habits of highly effective digital businesses.
Yeah, maybe it's not just tools. It can be habits and processes and things. Yeah, absolutely.
So Steve, just as in the digital marketing or the social media marketing work, we wouldn't advise a client to move into the world of social media marketing if they didn't have a basic marketing strategy or marketing plan.
Right.
And it's the same concept, good basic business approaches, how they move, how they evolve when you're thinking digital first. So how do you go from where you are to where you ought to be?
Yeah.
And you know, perhaps show 7 good tools or 7 good processes to do that.
I like habits. Habits is kind of, it's because I think it's more than tools and processes make everybody.
It is. It's a combination of all of those.
Yeah, we can figure out the right term. But
so before I have a comment I want to make, but before I make it, if anyone else has a thought, wants to add or a question, please go to that thing on the bottom that says list of participants, and then the bottom right of that, raise your hand and I'll see it. The comment that I have is that, you know, many of these things we're talking about, we are packaging in webinars and making them available as rapidly as possible to our clients. And those of us who are actively mentoring clients, you know, over time, we would look at some of our workshops, some of our webinars, but not to any great extent. And this is probably more than any time in the past, a time when our mentors need to also be looking at some of these webinars so that you can have the information. Well, we always encourage you to encourage a client to look at our workshops or webinars. You too need to understand this material so that when you're talking to your clients on a one-on-one basis, you know some of these things. So I think, you know, you get notified about these workshops and webinars. As we're just talking about, you know, there are things that we really need to make our clients aware of. And we have 2 ways that we interact with clients. One is the webinars and the other is the one-on-one mentoring. So mentors, please make sure that you get yourself up to speed with that as well.
And let me just add to that. For years, Bob Hogan and Budley and others in LA have been on in the webinar program for years. We've been encouraging people mentors to at least be aware of the content that's on demand on our site, so that when you get into a pickle with a client and they ask you a question, now on Zoom, before face-to-face, and you don't know the answer, if you know or have a list of the webinars that are there, that's supplemental education to what you have to carry around in your brain. So it's not different than what Bob said. It's just another way. All mentors should be going to the on-demand webinars.
Yep.
For several reasons.
Okay, I see one last hand raised. Rob Tobias.
Good morning. Matt did a great job, and it made me think also, Steve, you had said something. I currently own 2 spas, and so you look at the service industry, which is going to be devastated by this. Most places have to be closed and will be for the foreseeable future. So a lot of money has been flowing from the PPP, and a lot of thoughts have been given around how to get that as forgiven. I don't think enough thought has been given to how to use that cash, because cash is going to be king. Just to have people stay at home when your businesses are not open. So as part of the series that you're doing on getting reopened, should be a strategy of how do you look at the short term and the long term. Like Steve, what you said is going to be a huge concern. Most service businesses, when they're permitted to reopen, are going to be looking at a loss. The moment you open your door as a restaurant or as a service industry, and you can only have 25 to 50% of your revenue, you're at a loss. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't open. How do you take a look and say, how do I have cash? Because if I'm open, my customers can come in and I can build towards the future. So how do we take a look at both of that as part of the series going forward? Because I think there's going to be a crucial need for that as guidance to those, especially in the service industry.
Yeah. So couldn't agree. This is Steve Smith. I couldn't agree more, Bob. And I think maybe all of you that have ideas like we've been talking about, I'd say feed them to Tim and Bob Hogan, Tim Ryan and Bob Hogan. And I think and Bob Zitter, not Bob around here, Bob Zitter said before, some of these ideas will become parts of a module of a webinar, and others might be big enough to become their own webinar. But I think this is going to go on for quite much longer than we want it to go on. So this isn't like building a series that's going to have a half-life of 60 days. I think, unfortunately, it's going to have a lot longer time, and that's why I think it makes sense to have it be a series. Some of the ideas are parts of like the financial module, and other ideas are a module all of their own, and that's what the education committee is there to kind of decide. So great ideas.
Okay, I understand Steve Spiro has been raising his hand, but it hasn't been showing up on my screen. It might be because maybe he once worked at IBM. We have our limit of IBM people. But Steve, go ahead with your comment.
Hey, great feedback in general. And, one of the things that I'm a big networker. I've been doing it for a long time. And one thought for small business owners would be to leverage networking meetings, networking groups. I used to belong back in the day to BNI. I know there's some people have some perceived notions about that. But what's happened now because of COVID-19, and I'm not advocating one or the other, but what's happening is these networking groups are allowing people to visit and sort of hop from different meetings and different chapters, and it doesn't mean you have to drive. Some of the challenges were, maybe geographic locations and so forth, and they've opened up the borders. So the challenge as a small business owner many times is you're waiting for people, especially if it's a retail type organization, you're waiting for people to come in. And this is a way you can be proactive as a small business owner and go visit these groups and sort of tell your story, meet some new people, and get out there and not just wait for things to happen, but make things happen. So it's a great great resource that, again, now because of COVID, it's changed. And I don't know if it's going to be like this forever, but right now, while we're in this situation, we're all locked down. It's a great way to get out there and for these business owners to get some new business.
Thanks, Steve. Mike Clem.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Hey, those are some great ideas, Steve and Jeff and Robert and the other Steve. Got a lot of Steves here. And first of all, on Steve Sparrow's last comment, we happen to have a webinar on networking next Wednesday, and it's designed to be focused on. Bill Presley has put this together, focusing sort of on networking in the new environment. So you might want to take a look at that. I don't know if that's going to address what you were thinking about there, Steve, but if not, we'd certainly like to take a look at, another version of it, so to speak. But just going back to these great ideas, one thing we really benefit from on the education program is new ideas. These are great, but also new speakers who come forth with new ways of thinking, bring forth new ideas to the clients and the other attendees that we have. So for those who came up with ideas, if you could help us and come up with speakers that you think would be a good presenter, or if you would like to speak, we'd be happy to set you up with the webinar program. It is actually a fairly easy process. We got Budley and Elliot and others that handle the wizardry of the technical side. So we make it pretty easy. And these days, as you might imagine, we're just doing it all from home via the Zoom technology. So it's pretty convenient. Those are great ideas. And if you can, think of some speakers that could help us, that'd be great.
Okay, last two comments. Melissa Holick and then David Millington, and then we'll close.
Okay, I was just going to mention that Haven, which is a co-working, women's-centered, women's-focused co-working space in Darien that we're working with, they do these Haven half times every day. So it's 12 to 12:45. They've got a 20-minute presentation, and they've filled up every day. They've been doing it since, I think, end of March. But it's been really great. They've gotten more and more people participating. So I don't know if other co-working spaces are doing that as well, but that's a great avenue for some of our small business owners to, to get out there and like we said, just get your business out there, make it visible.
Fabulous. Thank you. David Millington.
Yes, thank you, Matthew, for great content. As far as a speaker is concerned, I'm available to, as a matter of fact, I'm very passionate about that. Presenting and designing curriculum is what I've done. I'm doing in my current role, and I've done a couple hundred presentations to date within the domains of my years of expertise. So I'll be happy to partake in that.
Thank you. So actually, I think this Zoom conversation went better than I anticipated, and everyone's learned how to raise their hand. So that's excellent.
No, it's the better conversation than we had at almost any face-to-face meeting, my opinion. Not that that matters, but it was great. Great idea.
Yeah. So thank you all for attending. Our next meeting is scheduled for June, and I forgot the date right offhand, but
June 11th, Bob.
June 11th. Thank you. And in the interim, there's been a lot that's been discussed, and I think the one thing that I would reiterate, and I really want to compliment Steve as well as everyone on the Education Committee. When we had these ideas in the past, we would kick them around, talk about them, it'd take a while, and we develop it. Everyone has moved so rapidly, and it really has impressed not just our clients, but the people at SCORE National, that we have been able to pivot as rapidly as possible and come up with as much good content and useful content as we have. So I know Steve has been a prod in this, and then many people have really worked hard to make it happen. So if you have any ideas, don't wait till the last meeting. reach out to Bob Hogan, to Tim Ryan, and anyone on the Education Committee, and that's the way we make things happen. So thank you all again, and we'll see you next month, if not before.
All right, great. Be safe.